Hi guys, it's Claire Akin with the Houseplant Resource Center, and today I want to talk about the top 10 easiest houseplants for beginners. And so this is for maybe if you're just starting out and you're a novice grower, or maybe you just don't want the hassle of a houseplant failing on you and you want to feel good about your green thumb. These are the easiest plants to grow. They make great gifts. They're great for offices, and I'll talk about the different use cases for each of these plants. One of the things I recommend when you're getting started growing houseplants is start with something easy to build your confidence, because it's so easy to fail and get discouraged and feel bad about yourself, and that's not what we want. Houseplants are a hobby to make us feel good about ourselves, so you want to start out with an easy plant, build your confidence, and then, kind of get into more difficult plants as you go. So I just want to talk about I'll go through the top 10 in no particular order, and I'll start with spider plants. Spider plants are super, super popular. My grandmother always had tons of these in her house. They're not my favorite, to be honest, but they are easy to grow. They don't take a lot of light. The reason they're called spider plants is they kind of drop these little spider babies that can actually sprout new plants. And so you got to be careful with these if you plant them outdoors, because they will overtake your entire area that you plant them in, because they're so prolific and they grow so easily. They don't need a lot of light. They don't need a lot of fertilizer. You can use indoor plant food to get them to grow faster. They are really, really fast growing. And so if you put them in a low light condition, they'll grow pretty quickly. If you give them more light, they'll actually grow even faster. And so you want to keep them in indirect light, but they're one of the easiest and the most popular houseplants, and they have been for decades. My personal favorite to start with is a pothos. And so it's also known as devil's ivy, but I think they're just so beautiful. They're so easy to grow. I have dozens of them. Even though, I'm really into houseplants and I like some more rarer houseplants, I have so many of these just because they're beautiful. They grow hanging in pots really well. You can have them, train them to go up trellises. They're just amazing. They're super easy to propagate. And so if you want to get started propagating plants or taking cuttings to grow new plants, these are one of the easiest ones to start with. They don't need a lot of water, but they actually tolerate if you overwater them, which is why I think they're a great plant to start with. And they don't need a lot of light. And so start with kind of, bright indirect light. But you can actually acclimate them into pretty dark conditions, and they're just gorgeous. I think they're pretty. I really like the variegation, and so that's one of my favorite plants to start with. The next is a snake plant, and so snake plants are really cool because they're actually succulents. So they don't need almost any water. You can really water them like once a month, like not very much at all, and they need barely any light. And so they're just the perfect solution if you have a room that's dark and if you just don't want to have to water your plants very often. This is a great solution. I keep these in my girls' rooms. I have a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old, and so I have snake plants in their rooms. One of the reasons why is because they actually release pure oxygen at night, and so if you put them in your kids' rooms, they'll get pure oxygen released into the air at night. They don't need a lot of water or light, and they're pretty indestructible, which is why they're perfect for a nursery or for a kid's room. They're a great office plant. You'll see them used commercially a lot in restaurants. So take a look at snake plants. They come in a lot of cool varieties. They need kind of a sandy, well-draining soil. You don't want to overwater them, otherwise they can get root rot and their leaves can kind of start to get mushy. You can fertilize them to make them grow quicker. They are pretty slow growing by nature, so buy kind of the size that you want and then just set it and forget it. And they do come in some cool varieties like the golden honeyeye. It has kind of short yellow leaves. The black gold is probably one of the most common ones you have. I have several of these. There's a white snake plant that's really, really cool. And then they also have a rhino grass one that has kind of reddish leaves that I like a lot. And then the twisted snake plant is my favorite. That is also called mother-in-law's tongue. And so I think that's kind of funny. So take a look at the different varieties as you kind of get into snake plants. Lucky bamboo is another one. You'll see this all the time in like storefronts or, at the dry cleaner or at the nail salon. So they're really, really popular. They actually don't even need soil. It's called a lucky bamboo, but it's actually a species of DRACAENA, which I'll talk about more later. They're beautiful. They're easy to take care of. They can grow in spirals, and people say that they bring you luck. So check out a lucky bamboo if you really want to get started and make it super easy on yourself. Philodendron is one of my favorites, and so this is one of the largest classes of houseplants, and there are tons of varieties of these. They're really easy to grow. They look a lot like pothos, so if you're not really familiar with houseplants, you may confuse the two, but they're different. I think they're just so beautiful. My favorite is the Philodendron Brazil. I think it looks like it was painted by the hand of God. It's just amazing. They grow like vines. They are really tolerant to low light, but also can tolerate bright indirect light. You don't want to put them in direct light or they will burn and they will get dry, but anything in between. They love humidity, so keep them in a bathroom if you can. They just grow and grow and grow. They can, you know, get long and be hanging plants, or if you put them on like the counter of your bathroom, they get bushy and beautiful. So I think they're just a great thing to get started with. They also are pretty slow to show problems, and so they let beginners correct course. And so you can see if they get yellow or if they start getting kind of brown spots and root rot and their leaves start dropping. They give you some time to correct course and to maybe stop overwatering, or maybe give it a little more sunlight or a little bit less. And so they're just a great plant to sort of hone your skill set as you get more into houseplants. So this is a popular, great plant to get started with. The next I will talk about is a peace lily. And so these are really cool for novices too. Because they are just so almost indestructible. They come in a lot of different varieties and they actually will flower. They're not lilies, but the flowers come out looking like lilies, and so that's why they're called a peace lily. You will see these all the time in people's homes who are not good at keeping houseplants, because these are the last ones standing that they'll keep for years and years. And so when I go into somebody's house and they have like a black thumb, the peace lily that looks like crap is probably like the only plant that they have, because it's the only one that has survived their neglect. But they can come back pretty quickly. I also saw a peace lily in this cabin that we stayed at that was in the snow, and it hadn't been watered for weeks. And it also was sustaining really horrible temperature fluctuations from having this cabin be vacant where the temperatures go down into the 30s, and then having people come in and blast the heater, bring it up to the 80s and have super dry conditions. And this thing was really hanging on. They do really well with dryness, lack of humidity, temperature fluctuations. They are just a really great plant to start with. One of the other cool things is that as you get better at growing plants, the peace lily will get healthier and healthier, and then once it's doing well, it will sprout these beautiful white flowers. And so it's such a cool variety to get started with, because as you get better, you'll see your improvement. They also come in a giant form, which I love. So they get huge, huge glossy leaves. So check out a peace lily. It's a great plant to get started with. The next one I want to talk about is a cast iron plant. So this is the only one that I don't own myself. I find them a little bit boring, but they are indestructible. So they earn their name because they're tough. They're a cast iron plant. They grow like weeds outdoors. And so they really are they're dark green, they're beautiful, they're almost impossible to kill. And so it's a good plant to gift to somebody. It's just a great plant to get started with. The next one I want to mention is a MONSTERA. And so a lot of people think monsteras are hard to grow. They're not hard to grow. They're really forgiving, and they're so beautiful, and they're so popular right now. So they have the fenestration in their leaves, and they're just very remarkable, gorgeous, super on trend right now. And so I encourage you to try this out because they aren't hard to grow. The thing that they need is well-draining soil, and so we actually have a MONSTERA soil. So if you put your MONSTERA in this MONSTERA soil, you won't have any problems with it. We have a MONSTERA plant food as well. So check that out, and they just don't need a lot of water. They need indirect light. They'll grow, their leaves will get bigger and bigger, and they're just a lot of fun. You can grow them hanging, you can grow them just in a pot, you can grow them up a trellis or a moss pole. And so I recommend getting started with this if you want to kind of have a trendy houseplant or something that looks a little different, a little special. The next one I want to talk about was, I think, the first houseplant that I ever got, and this is a DRACAENA lemon lime. And these are my favorites to give to people who have never had a houseplant before because they look so beautiful, they are so easy to care for, they won't give you any problems. These are really typical office plants. People put them in offices because they don't need any light, and they really don't need to be watered very often. So if you go on vacation, or if the office closes down for 2 weeks over the holidays, they will do just fine. They do fine with fluorescent office lighting. If you do take good care of them and give them, more light, more indirect light, and fertilize them, they will grow really quickly and become really tremendously beautiful. They come in a lot of different varieties, but my favorite variety is the lemon lime, which gives you this great variegation and it just looks so beautiful. Fertilize it with indoor plant food. They like a really balanced fertilizer, and just don't over fertilize it. If they get brown spots, that means that you're overwatering and they have root rot, so you want to kind of hold back on your watering. But overall, they're just a great starter plant. So the Chinese evergreen is the next one I want to talk about. And these are the plants that you will get and you will realize, I've had this plant for like 5 or 10 years and it kind of looks the same as it did when it started, and it's never given me any problems. I cycle through plants a lot because I like to get harder varieties to grow, and then, maybe I'll get new things and I give away older things. But I have these 2 Chinese evergreens that I have had for I think 5 or 7 years, and you just don't think about them because they don't give you any problems. They don't need any light. They barely need any water. They just do well. They don't grow really quickly. They'll put out a few leaves here and there if you fertilize them, which I fertilize mine every 2 weeks. And so they give me a little bit of new growth, but really not much. And so they just are what they are. You'll see them in a lot of offices. You'll see them used commercially. So they're a great plant just to have a plant that's gonna look good, that's gonna stay put and never gonna give you any problems and can last for decades. They come in a lot of different varieties. There's a really cool red variety. They just are one of the plants that I think that you will have success with. Probably the easiest one. If you were going to start with any of these, I would do a pothos or a Chinese evergreen. So that's my top 10 easiest houseplants to grow, but I want to give you one bonus plant, and that is a fiddle fig. And so fiddle figs are dramatic, they're gorgeous, they're huge, they're trendy, they're the most popular houseplant on the planet, and people think they're hard to grow, but they are not hard to grow if you do it right. And so we have a whole website and resource center for fiddle figs. We have a soil, we have a fertilizer, we have a root rot treatment, we have everything that you need to take care of your fiddle fig, including a moisture meter so you can tell when to water it, because the most common problem with fiddle fig plants is overwatering. So as long as you can give them enough light and not overwater them, they're going to be just fine, and you can enjoy sort of a more dramatic statement plant in your home. So check out our videos on fiddle figs. Check out the Fiddle Fig Resource Center for all of your kind of shopping for the products that you need to take care of a fiddle fig. And if you start with a good soil and you don't overwater, you use a moisture meter, you fertilize properly, you will have an amazing, striking fiddle fig in your home that will be the envy of all of your friends. So thank you so much for watching. Please answer today's question of the video, which is, what is your go-to plant when you gift somebody a plant? So when you give a plant to a novice grower, what do you use? And then subscribe if this video was helpful for you. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.